The saga of the Titans was only just beginning, and popular horror director Michael Doherty, himself a lifelong Godzilla fan, was brought on board to expand the legendary monsterverse and lure Godzilla into battle with a few of its most famous friends and foes in his 2019 film, Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
Let them fight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town, Jim.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Chills and Thrills. My name is Connor Dunham and I am here along with Chris, and we are doing one of my favorite films in the Godzilla franchise here today in the 2019 Godzilla King of the Monsters. I did not get a chance to see the 2014 Godzilla in theaters. So when I seen the web on the internet that they were making a sequel to this, and it was going to involve Mothra and Rodan and King Ghidorah, I just absolutely went bonkers excited. And then the trailer released, and then a second trailer and a third trailer, and every time I seen something about this film, I got more excited about it. And I believe I even bought a Team Godzilla t-shirt to wear when I went to see this film in theaters, and it was one of the most fun theater experiences that I've had. And I've absolutely loved this film ever since. I've watched this on repeat. Man, since it came out, I've probably watched this 20 times a year. So, anytime I'm bored, it and sitting at home alone, or the my lady and our little girl are taking a nap or something, it's either this film or Jaws are the two films that I tend to battle back and forth and just constantly watch. Chris, I know you said seen this in theaters as well. What are your fond memories early on of this film?
Oh yeah, I remember when this was going to be directed by Gareth Edwards, the director of the first one, when it was going to potentially come out in 2017, then 2018, and then eventually Edwards left the film and it finally landed 2019. I was hyped from the get-go. I was waiting for it, and I was hyped when they made the announcement that it would have Rodan, Mothra, and King Ghidorah in it, and loved all of the trailers, loved all of the marketing. Uh, huge fan of the film. It's high on my Godzilla rankings for sure. Hard to say definitive top 5 or something like that, but it's certainly in my top 10 without a doubt. And you know, I I love almost everything about this movie. I saw it 3 or 4 times in theaters, it's excellent. So I mean, I don't really, I mean, we'll get more into it, but I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, we don't want to spoil too much. That's why you got to listen to the episode.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, this was actually what made me kind of try to get my lady into watching the Godzilla films with me, was this, because we got together in 2018 towards the end of it, and this came out 2019. So as soon as the trailers and stuff started dropping, I was like, "Will you go see this with me?" And she's like, "Yeah, if you want me to." So I was like, "Well, do you want to kind of explore the Godzilla lore? Like, you've never seen any of them." So we marathoned all of them leading up to this, and then
That's
we went and seen
that
this in theaters. So
that's funny because the girl I was dating at the time, I had done the math of figuring out, if you watched one Godzilla movie a week, when you would have to start watching them all to then end with this one. And I told her about that, and then she was like, "Well, I'll watch them all with you." I'm like, "Okay." So we started, however many weeks, 30 whatever weeks before this, and including Kong Skull Island, of course, just one a week we would watch them to build up to it. So we did the marathon leading up to this too, because I was big. I was like, oh, it's the 65-year anniversary. It's this and that and the other. Like I was very very hyped, very into it. So we did the marathon as well.
Yeah, it was fun. I could not believe I I found a girl to sit through all these, including like Son of Godzilla and Godzilla's Revenge or All Monsters Attack, and then it was amazing. So it's like, hey, I'm gonna try to keep you around. You might be worth something here.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
But I remember, I remember this film when it first came out. The reviews and everything were just not good. So many people were hating on this, and they thought it was a subpar film to the 14 film and such like that. And then when I joined on Facebook on the Godzilla fan club page, and I started finally seeing this film getting some love, and I was like, finally, like, why is this film is phenomenal, from the monsters to, everybody says the human characters aren't what they want, but you know what? It's called Godzilla King of the Monsters. Like, we want monsters in this film. So if we have mediocre characters, that's fine, as long as these monsters and the designs are top tier.
Yeah, I felt like the critics had it wrong from the get go on this, and I'm one of those that damn near every category that you compare this in the 2014 movie, I consider this one to be an improvement. I mean, I don't have any hate for the 2014 movie, and when people talk crap on it, I'll be quick to defend it. But that's far from a perfect film, and it's not like this perfect dream, most amazing Godzilla movie ever made. It's great, I love it, but almost everything across the board, the musical score, the monster roster, the way the monster action is spaced out and spread across the film, the visuals, the action sequences, and the characters. I generally, the overall aesthetic, all of the lore and Easter eggs and references to all of the past Godzilla films, I generally consider this one to be an improvement over 2014 in basically every way.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with you, and like, along with you, I've backed this film since it came out, and I'll go ahead and get into some quick background on the film and how it was produced real quick for us. Godzilla King of the Monsters is a 2019 American monster film directed and co-written by Michael Doherty, produced by Legendary Pictures, and distributed by Warner Bros. Pictures. This is a sequel to the 2014 Godzilla and a third film in the MonsterVerse. It is also the 35th film in the Godzilla franchise and the third film to be completely produced by a Hollywood studio, and stars Kyle Chandler, Vera Farmiga, Millie Bobby Brown, Bradley Whitford, Sally Hawkins, Charles Dance, Thomas Middleditch, Aisha Hins, O'Shea Jackson Jr., David Strathern, Ken Watanabe, and Zhang Ziyi. And this sequel was greenlit during the opening weekend of the 2014 Godzilla, with Gareth Edwards expected to return to direct a full trilogy. But in May 16, Edwards left the project, and in October 2016, Doherty and Shields were hired to rewrite the script. In January 2017, Doherty was announced as the director. Principal photography began in June of 2017 in Atlanta and wrapped in September of 2017. The film is also dedicated to executive producer Yoshimitsu Banno, who was the director of Godzilla vs. Hedorah, and original Godzilla suit performer Hiro Nakajima, both of whom died in 2017. And Godzilla King of the Monsters was theatrically released on May 31st, 2019, to mixed reviews from critics, with praise for the visual effects and action sequences and the musical score, but with criticism to the plot, pacing, tone, and the lack of the character growth. So there's a little information on the film.
Yeah, and really nice that Yoshimitsu Banno got a dedication in this film, and he continues to get executive producer credit on all of the MonsterVerse movies. The story behind how Toho was kind of let the IP kind of simmer and flame out for an indefinite amount of time, and then the IMAX license that Bono had gotten from Toho to make an IMAX Godzilla movie, that eventually led to Legendary coming on board and doing a full blown Hollywood production and giving us the MonsterVerse. So Bono deserves an insane amount of credit for being one of the key pieces that orchestrated all of this to be allowed to happen and kind of revive the franchise. So I'm glad that he still continues to get credit on all of these projects.
Yeah, absolutely. It's well deserved considering, he had an idea that didn't really get to come to fruition. But, it's nice to see that these films, every now and again you'll see dedicated to such and such who were previous directors or suit performers or whatnot from previous Godzilla films. And it's nice to see that they're paying homage or paying their respects.
Yeah, I'd very much like to see, I think people always talk about monsters that would be good for the MonsterVerse, and it would be a nice extra tribute if they somehow did a modern iteration of Hedorah for the MonsterVerse. That would be a really cool thing because that's a monster that could be amazing with modern digital effects, and it could be really unique and creative, and it would be another sort of tribute to Bono and the film he made.
Yeah, in 10 years, give us what we want. Give us a destroy all monsters. Bring in Biolante, Gigan, Hedra, bring them all in updated forms. I can only imagine what CGI could do for them.
Yeah, Biolante and Hedera in particular would be, the digital effects, like the level to which those creatures could sort of be reimagined or just freed up with modern effects to be much more interesting and unique is very enticing.
Yeah, that especially after seeing what they did with this film and Godzilla vs. Kong and now, Godzilla minus one.
Exactly.
Well, I'll go ahead and get into a trailer for the film, read off a plot synopsis, and I'll come back with some fun facts, some numbers, and all that good stuff from the film.
It better be the first trailer with Claire de Lune.
Our world is changing. The mass extinction we feared has already begun, and we are the cause. We are the infection. But like all living organisms, the Earth unleashed a fever to fight this infection. Its original and rightful rulers, the Titans. For thousands of years, these creatures have remained in hiding around the world. And unless all the Titans are found, our planet will perish, and so will we. They are the only guarantee that life will carry on. This is the only way.
You're a monster. I'm sorry.
Long live the king.
5 years after the existence of giant monsters called Titans was revealed to the world, Dr. Emma Russell a paleobiologist working for the Titan studying organization Monarch, and her daughter Madison witness the birth of a larva called Mothra. Emma calms Mothra using the Orca, a device that can emit frequencies to attract or alter Titan behavior. A group of eco-terrorists led by former British Army Colonel Alan Jonah attacks the base and abducts Emma and Madison. At the same time, Mothra flees and pupates under a nearby waterfall. Monarch scientists Dr. Ishiro Serizawa and Vivian Graham approach former employee Dr. Mark Russell, Emma's ex-husband and Madison's father, to help track them down. Mark is reluctant at first due to his hatred toward Godzilla, whom he blames for his son Andrew's death during their events in San Francisco, but eventually agrees. The Monarch team follows Godzilla to Antarctica, where Jonah plans to free a three-headed Titan codenamed Monster Zero. Emma frees and awakens Monster Zero, who proves to be hostile. He slaughters Monarch's G-team, battles Godzilla, and devours Graham before escaping. The team later realizes that Emma is working with the terrorists. From a Monarch bunker, Emma contacts Monarch and argues that the Titans must be awakened to heal the Earth from the human impact on the environment, pointing to Monarch researching indicating that Titans can terraform and replenish ecosystems. Emma awakens Rodan in Mexico, and the Monarch team lures it towards Monster Zero. After Monster Zero defeats Rodan, Godzilla ambushes Monster Zero, severing his left head. During the fight, the US military launches a prototype weapon called the Oxygen Destroyer, seemingly killing Godzilla. Unaffected, Monster Zero regrows his lost head and awakens the other dormant Titans worldwide, with Rodan submitting to his rule, while Serizawa chides Mark that he's gotten what he wished for. A heartbroken Madison disowns Emma. Through analyzing Monster Zero's abilities and mythological texts, Monarch deduced that it's King Ghidorah, a highly destructive alien, and that it likely seeks to destructively terraform Earth for itself. A post-pupation Mothra flies to Monarch's Bermuda base to communicate with Godzilla, who is recuperating in an ancient underwater city in the Hollow Earth. The team uses a submarine to locate Godzilla's highly radioactive lair, deducing it will take too long for Godzilla to heal on his own. Serizawa sacrifices himself by manually detonating a nuclear warhead to speed up the process, reviving Godzilla and increasing his power. Emma realizes that Ghidorah's reign over the other Titans is bringing destruction that will be far worse than anything humans could inflict, but Jonah ignores her pleas to try and stop it. Madison overhears her mother's plan to lure Ghidorah to Boston nearby, and steals the Orca so she can implement it herself. Arriving at Fenway Park, Madison broadcasts a frequency that calms the Titans but unwittingly attracts them all to her location. Ghidorah lands in Boston to destroy the Orca. Godzilla arrives to engage him in battle, with Monarch Personal's assistance. Mark leads a team to rescue Madison and escape the city, learning Godzilla's radiation levels are increasing and will lead to a thermonuclear explosion. Mothra arrives to help Godzilla, but is intercepted by Rodan. She defeats him but is injured in the process. Ghidorah overpowers Godzilla, but Mothra sacrifices herself and transfers her energy to Godzilla. Mark, Emma, and Madison are reunited and reactivate the Orca to prevent Ghidorah from sucking Godzilla and Mothra's energy out of Godzilla. Emma sacrifices herself to keep Ghidorah distracted, chasing the Orca, giving Mark, Madison, and the Monarch team time to escape. Godzilla enters a newly empowered state and vaporizes Ghidorah. Rodan and the other Titans converge on Godzilla and bow to him as their new alpha. During the ending credits, news clippings and Monarch public files show that the Titans are now healing the planet. A suspected second Mothra egg has been discovered, and some Titans are converging on Skull Island. Ancient cave paintings of Godzilla and Kong-like Titans locked in battle are shown. In a post-credits scene, Jonah and his forces purchase Ghidorah's previously severed left head in Mexico. All right, Chris. How about I hit you with some fun facts?
Sounds good. Fire away.
Here we go. Hey, there it is. Absolutely. I love it. Oh, this one's kind of depressing, but Godzilla King of the Monsters was nominated for Worst Prequel, Remake, Ripoff, or Sequel at the 40th Golden Raspberry Awards.
That's some horse manure. That's all I'll say. That's some horse manure.
Yeah, I don't. Oh man, I'm sure there was a worse film in
There,
2019 that was a sequel than this.
there were 20, 30, 40, many worse movies than this. There were probably 10 movies that summer that were worse than this movie. They can go to hell.
Take that, Golden
Yeah.
Raspberry Awards.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Uh, this film's opening emulates the opening of the original Godzilla film from 1954, beginning with the sound of Godzilla's footsteps, followed by his roar. Shin Godzilla also opens similarly, although it used the same sound effects from the 54 film.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I like that little tradition. I'm one of those that I would love to see that, sort of in the same way that you have the gun barrel sequence from James Bond movies. It would be really cool if sort of the three footsteps and the roar could be, a bit of a recurring thing for Godzilla. That would be nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I love hearing the footsteps. That's why that's one reason I kind of put it at the end of our episodes here, as our episodes kind of tail off.
Yeah, exactly. It's very cool.
This is the only movie of the MonsterVerse films to not have an opening credits sequence.
Yeah, yeah. This one has it as an ending title sequence, and that's another cool thing about the MonsterVerse movies is that most modern movies tend to not really do opening title montages and storytelling, but the MonsterVerse films kind of use that to expand the storytelling of the movies. And I was hoping this one would have one and set to the main Godzilla theme, and it would kind of do like a bridging the gap and covering sort of what's gone on between 2014 and this one. But it gives us something really really cool for the end title sequence as well. So no complaints there. The end title sequence is amazing. So
That's exactly what I was going to bring up. Is the end title sequence with the song Godzilla is it's the bee's knees, man. I love it.
yeah, yeah. The Bear McCreary Serge Tankian cover of Blue Oyster Cult's Godzilla, uh really deep cut because he's the lead singer of System of a Down. And back in the early sort of YouTube and internet days, music videos set to this franchise or that TV show were very very popular. And Godzilla music videos were, things that I looked up, and you could always find a number of them set to various System of a Down songs or Linkin Park songs or Disturbed songs. So to come kind of full circle where Serge Tankian is doing the cover of Blue Oyster Cult's Godzilla for the end title montage of a Godzilla movie is pretty. That's a pretty amazing thing.
I don't know. I wanted to bring this up to you. If you have seen, I think I don't the 2020 or the 2021 footage of G Fest, where it's like the crowd's reaction to this film. It's like a
Yeah.
16-minute video.
Uh, I've not seen the 16-minute video, but I have seen the clip where the crowd's singing along with the song. If that's what you're talking
Yeah, at
about.
the end,
Yeah.
that's something that I wish I could have been at. That would have
I
been so.
know, I know. That's such a cool thing. So sort of like heartwarming. It's like this film might not have been the biggest hit right off the bat in theaters, but the legacy of this movie as a piece of the MonsterVerse and sort of the place it holds with a lot of fans and the regard that it gets over long term. You know, like this isn't like this movie's a big win. And from what I understand, all of the sort of DVDs and comic books and toys and merchandise and all that stuff for this film were all quite successful. So it's an overall financial win, and it's got a positive legacy, and the franchise is still going. So it didn't fail in my eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. It, I mean, it's my favorite of the MonsterVerse, hands down. I mean, there's a little fun fact from myself for everyone.
Very very nice, very very nice. It's up there.
I'll get back to some more fun facts since I got a ton for you here. The orca in this film was named after Quint's iconic fishing boat from Jaws, which was used to hunt the great white shark, kind of like it's used to find the monsters or the kaiju in this film.
Yeah, and that's fun because weren't the isn't the Brody family from Godzilla 2014 also named after the family in Jaws? So some fun little Jaws connections, and we'll get to minus Godzilla minus one famously has some kind of like homages and allusions to Jaws as well. So Jaws and Godzilla are kind of got this they got this linkage going on, which is nice.
Probably two of my favorite films of all time. So
Yeah.
I'm 1,000% okay with them two having connections with each other.
And well, and what Godzilla versus King Ghidorah in 1991, it referenced Major Spielberg, and Spielberg directed Jaws. So there's another one.
Yeah, there's plenty of connections between them. Just nice little nods.
Yep.
This one's fun. The pounding sound Godzilla's dorsal fins make when they're flashing or he's doing his intimidation display is taken from King Kong's weakened heartbeat from the final scene of the 1976 film after Kong falls off the Trade Center.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, I understand they played that on set for the cast and crew when they were doing that scene.
Yeah, there's so many connections with this 2019 film. I'll keep going, but it's just crazy.
Yeah, they did their homework and they did right by it.
Yeah, absolutely. A death scene for Admiral William Stenz was filmed but went unused. But in the novelization, the Argo loses contact with his submarine, leaving his fate ambiguous. Now, I did read the novelization for all the MonsterVerse films so far, and this novelization for this film is absolutely phenomenal. And I'm not really a big reader, but it's super good.
Outside of things like covering the death of that character, are there any sort of huge kind of diversions or alterations or things like that between the novel and the film for this one?
Not really.
Okay.
It's just it's much more detailed, kind of like with like the fight scenes, like Godzilla getting bit or cut or things like that.
Embellishment, gotcha.
Yep. Dr. Ishiro Serizawa's sacrifice in this film is a complete subversion of Dr. Daisuke Serizawa's sacrifice in the original 54 film, whereas the original Serizawa burned his research notes before killing himself, along with Godzilla using the oxygen destroyer. But here in this film, he makes sure to leave behind his notes before sacrificing himself to help Godzilla recover from getting hit by the oxygen destroyer.
Yeah, it's a great sort of mirroring and a bit of an inversion. Like, I think that's a cool way to tribute it. You're not just retreading the same exact steps, you're sort of twisting it into the other direction, which is a neat tribute as well. I liked it a lot. People are saying that it turned this film into some kind of like pro-nuclear message or something like that. It's like, no, not at all. It's just a shift in the dynamic. Nuclear energy has plenty of benefits and plenty of things that can be used for good from it. So it's just kind of maturing the conversation. Nuclear energy isn't just about blowing things up anymore.
Yeah, it does plenty of good, like bringing back a giant monster that we know can save the world from other monsters.
Yeah, exactly. You got to do the Jesus Christ metaphor and bring Godzilla back from the dead.
Yeah, we got to do what's best for us, and Godzilla is it.
Yeah. And when that bomb goes off, do you want to talk about the? I'm sure it's one of your pieces of trivia. You want to talk about a skeleton that can be briefly seen in that temple when that bomb goes off?
You know what's crazy? That is absolutely my very next fun fact.
There we go.
It says, according to Michael Doherty, there is a skeleton located just outside Godzilla's underwater lair, which might or might not be Anguirus.
Yeah, I think for legal purposes, they can't claim that it's Anguirus because they wouldn't have paid the license for the character just for the skeleton. But officially, everyone has said that it's Anguirus, and I bet Godzilla ripped his throat out and set him on fire like he did the original Anguirus. Just had him over like an open roast fire cookout.
Well, I hope not, because I really like Anguirus, and I'd like to see him team up here soon again.
Oh, I think we'll get sidekick Anguirus one of these days. I think we will.
I hope so. I truly do. But this in this film, in the end credits, the cast list states that Godzilla, King Ghidorah, Mothra, and Rodan were all portrayed by themselves.
Yeah, I always thought that. Like, I love it when movies do fun things like that, and I love I don't know why all of the Godzilla movies don't put that in the credits, because I think that's just like fun and charming. You have to think, like, if you were like a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old kid and you saw that, like, that would just be fun.
Yeah, it's a nice little self-aware message almost. It's absolutely fun. This one I will read off a bunch. This is the numerical designations of the Monarch outposts surrounding many of the Titans in the film contain like their own allusions or like call outs or callbacks. And that there's like 6 or 7 of these that I'll go into. Outpost 61 references the release year of Mothra's debut film in 1961. Outpost 56 references the release year of Rodin's debut film in 1956. Outpost 54 likewise references the release year of Godzilla's debut film, 1954. Or I believe Outpost 54 is Castle Bravo.
Yeah, which is also a reference to the Castle Bravo test that triggered the production of the original 54 film, and in the MonsterVerse is the test that they used to try and kill Godzilla.
Yes, absolutely. Outpost 32 serves as a reference to Outpost 31, the primary location in the 1982 sci-fi horror film The Thing. And the titular creature in that film, much like Ghidorah, is an alien monster that became frozen in the Antarctic ice in the ancient past, only to be released in the present day. 32 is also half of 64, possibly referencing the year of King Ghidorah's debut film, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, in 1964.
Yeah, and another fun connection to The Thing is that Kurt Russell is now a cast member of the MonsterVerse, and had a starring role in in the first season of Monarch: Legacy of Monsters. So another connection to The Thing there.
Yep, that's I gotta catch up on Monarch. I'm only halfway through it.
It finishes strong. It finishes strong. It's not a perfect series, but it's quite solid, and the world building and filling in the gap in the timeline that it does is really, really cool and neat. So I definitely recommend finishing out. It finishes pretty strong.
Perfect. I like to hear it. I got 3 more references for the Outpost for you, and then we can go into some numbers or character, whatever we want to do here.
Sounds good.
Uh, Outpost 33, which is labeled on a computer screen over Skull Island, references the release year of King Kong's debut film in 1933. Outpost 55, which houses the spider-like Scylla and is located in the Arizona desert, references the 1955 American film Tarantula. And then Outpost 77, located at Devil's Tower, references the 1977 American sci-fi film Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So those are all my fun or behind the scenes facts for you.
Very nice indeed. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice to see. I loved the first, even when I see it in theaters, I was with my lady in theaters and it showed Outpost 61. And then when they went in, it showed Mothra. And I was like, her first film was released that year.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
as you've seen it, you started catching on through the film. If you're a
Yeah.
Godzilla fan.
Yeah, I'm a trivia guy and a junkie guy. Some of the earliest things I committed to memory as a kid was not just every Godzilla movie and the order they came out in, but I knew the year that all of them came out in. So those numbers are just stuck in my brain. I couldn't forget them even if I tried. So, I always think it's fun when films like this take every opportunity they can to have some kind of reference and connection and link, to really kind of like, unify the lore and the mythology and the legacy of the series, and kind of, make it all feel cohesive and connected. I love that.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've watched any of like the interviews with Michael Doherty. He's been a lifelong Godzilla fan, and that's the exact reason he put like all these little winks and nods in this film. And a lot of the reason that I heard or like read that this film has got so much like flack about it is because that all the winks and nods were a little too cheesy and
Oh my
stuff like
gosh.
that. And I'm like, that's fun. That's for fans.
Yeah.
That's absolute fun when you do something like that.
I reject that entirely. Like, I think that stuff is only just icing on the cake. Like, it's just like sprinkling fun little things for fans to enjoy and get. Like, it's not beating you over the head with this stuff. And if you don't know the lore and the franchise and the mythology and all that stuff, then they just fly right past you anyway. It's there for hardcore fans to find if they're willing to dig. And Michael Doherty, he definitely he's definitely a real G when it comes to being a fan. I remember I was watching one interview with him where they talked about Ghidorah shooting electricity or lightning bolts or something, and just like casually in conversation he's just like, they're gravity beams. Like, he doesn't, like, he knows, he does not mess around. He just like was just checking it. Like, it's like, no, they're not lightning bolts, they're gravity beams. But it was just the casual way he did it. I'm like, that's a real fan. That's a real fan.
Yeah, I watched all the special features for this film, and just the way he got into talking about how they changed Godzilla's design. They made his spikes or his fins on his back. There's five different things you can call them, but how they wanted to represent more of the Heisei era with them, and a little bit of the Showa era for a certain design of Rodan and this and that. Like, how he just talked about how they kind of like redesigned them and stuff like that. The guy is truly a Godzilla nerd fan, and it's great that we got as much as a big of a Godzilla fan to direct a Godzilla film.
Yeah.
Considering how much respect he put into this film, it was great.
Yeah, and fingers crossed he might get. I'm hoping he'll get a second chance down the road. Hopefully, because if he delivers another one, it'll be good. It'll be a banger.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'll go into some quick numbers for you, and then I'll have you go right into who your favorite character was, and we'll keep on rolling.
Sure.
Godzilla King of the Monsters opened at number 1 in the United States and Canada with just over 47 million, and internationally it opened with 130 million. The budget for this film was roughly $170 million, and in the box office it made a total of 386 million, with 110 million domestic and 276 from the foreign box office. And I mean, I heard when this film came out that it was a bust. It was a flop, and it's crazy to me that a film can make almost $400 million. Granted, I know your budget is considerably high, but I mean, you made more than double your budget, and you're making money off toy sales, and they made a novelization, and then once DVD and Blu-ray and now 4K, like, I get all that wasn't considered into this, but at the time, I still don't get how this film was considered a flop or a bust in the box office.
Yeah, generally it was kind of perceived, because I remember in the build-up, a lot of people were wondering. The big conversation was, well, how much more than the first one was going to make? There were people talking like, first one made 500 million. Is this one going to go 600, 700? And the trailers were so great. There were just a lot of very, very high hopes and expectations. And then, when it comes out, it unfortunately follows Avengers Endgame, which made nearly $3 billion, and it follows the Aladdin remake, which made over $1 billion. So, and that was all within a month of this film's release in the lead up to it. So audiences very much had been kind of tapped out. They had gone to see Avengers Endgame is still the second biggest hit of all time. It wasn't just like a successful film. It's one of the biggest pop culture moments of the last 10 years, or maybe the last 25 years. And then Aladdin followed right up and made another billion. So this film, by the time this one came out, a lot of the audience had been kind of eaten up. There's been studies. The average family only goes to the movie theater once a month. So if you've got two big movies that everyone went to in May, and then this comes at the end, people have kind of made their trip. So it made quite a bit less than the first one. And so that was kind of perceived as like, well, not only did it not outgross it, but it made quite a bit less. So this is horrible and terrible. And films, essentially, if you've got a $100 million budget, the theaters are going to keep close to half of what you make. So if you have a $100 million budget, your film has to basically make 200 million to break even. And then if you spend another 50 million on marketing, that's another 100 million you have to make to cover the marketing costs. So it was a very, very big investment, and it didn't quite, the box office alone was not really a hit for this film. It wasn't terribly successful. But again, on a long enough timeline, and with all of the ancillaries and all the other stuff, the collectibles, the toys, the merch, the apparel, the comics, the novels, all of this thing, the eventual DVD, Blu-ray sales, all of the different, I was in Walmart today and there's a Blu-ray set that had King of the Monsters, Godzilla versus Kong and Skull Island in it, those package deals. On a long enough like this film has done well, and I'm sure it's earned its bones back on a long enough timeline. From what I understand, Legendary considered the overall performance to be quite successful. So, it is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. It just I hate hearing that a Godzilla film that is as good as this, this is top notch special effects and whatnot, stuff like that. That it came out as a flop. It's just disappointing and kind of unnerving to hear.
Yeah, it definitely if I could do anything to swap the box office performance of Aladdin in this movie and give this movie the billion and give Aladdin the 350 million, I would, but that's just not how the cookie crumbled.
Nope. And some of these next numbers are a little disappointing too. This one's not so bad. The 6 out of 10 on IMDb. This is the one that kind of sucks for Rotten Tomatoes. Rated it a 42% based on 353 reviews. But the film has an 83% audience score based on over 25,000 reviews. So take that, Rotten Tomatoes.
Exactly. Power of the people.
Yeah, we are 41% higher than you based on 22,500 more reviews. So
yeah,
eat that cookie.
This is an example. I know for a few years now it's been very popular. There was a string of movies where it was almost like famously being reported where if the critic score was like a high critic score and then a very low audience score, or a very low critic score and a very high audience score, like there was this huge divide between what the quote unquote professional critics thought of almost any movie coming out and what the paying customers thought. There's just a huge number of movies where there was this huge gap. It's like clearly there's a disconnect here. Clearly what people are wanting to see and what people enjoy is not what the critics are wanting, and the stuff that the critics are kind of shilling for and saying is great is not what anyone else wants and likes. So, this is definitely one of those examples.
Yeah, and I would love to get somehow into being a critic because, I've seen probably hundreds or thousands of movies in my lifetime, and there are very few that I would rate so low on like a Rotten Tomatoes type score where they're like a 25 or a 29 or something. Even Godzilla's Revenge or All Monsters Attack is not one of my favorite movies by leaps and bounds, but I still don't think I would rate it, a 25% on Rotten Tomatoes because it's you can still have fun with it or something like that. I don't know where these guys get their ratings from or how they feel about it, how they feel so sourly on a film.
Yeah, and I'm not about to defend professional movie critics. Clearly they have no souls, but I do think though, like I think some of it comes from the fact that their job is to watch movies, and that inevitably means that they're being paid and forced to watch a ton of movies that they would rather not watch at all. Like, could you imagine if someone was like, and like with TV shows too, or if someone's like, hey, there's this 3.5 hour, black and white French drama about cowboys that you have to watch, and you have zero interest in it, and you have to sit through the whole thing and try and review it, professionally, like you'd probably be skewed a little bit in hating on that movie. I can only imagine what it would be like to be forced to watch damn near every movie that came out and for that to be your job. Like, yeah, I can imagine I'd get a little jaded too, but maybe you shouldn't be a critic if you can't do that. I don't know.
I was just going to say that. Well, then get a different job if you don't like what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I'll get back to some numbers for you. This is a 48 out of 100 on Metacritic, but also on Metacritic has a 72% rating from the fans and 84% from our lovely Google users.
Yep, Chads.
Love them. Gotta love them. And then Godzilla's on screen for 9 minutes and 53 seconds, or 7% of the film, with his first appearance bright and early at around 2 minutes into the film. So those are some numbers for you on Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Yeah, very nice. A little less full-blown Godzilla screen time than the last movie, but very much balanced out by the fact that you also have Mothra, Rodan, and King Ghidorah in this film. It's not just the Mutos, which we kind of are brand new monsters. Like, you have three iconic Toho monsters alongside Godzilla in this film. So I can take Godzilla, not being quite on screen as much, because overall it feels like we get a lot more monster action, a lot more monster screen time than the last movie.
Yeah, and when you have these three, and then like Godzilla and Mechagodzilla are like the iconic, like the all stars of the Godzilla franchise, and to bring these three back in the form and fashion that they did in this film, I love it. I'll take a little bit less Godzilla to have these three monsters in this film. Absolutely.
Exactly. They're like the Infinity Stones.
All right. Why don't Chris, you go ahead if you're all right with this, and you go first for our favorite character of the film.
Yeah. My favorite character, without a doubt, is the main character, Mark Russell. I've liked Kyle Chandler as an actor ever since the first movie I saw him in was in the 2005 Peter Jackson King Kong movie, where he was a supporting role. And I remember thinking, I've always had an affinity for sort of side characters in movies. I think that kind of comes from like Star Wars, where people like Han Solo, even though Luke Skywalker's the hero, the main character. So I think like whenever there's group characters in movies, I kind of always pick one of the not main people. Like everyone likes Legolas and Lord of the Rings, and it's not really his trilogy. Things like that. So I kind of just have a natural vibe of doing that. And so Kyle Chandler as Baxter in the Peter Jackson King Kong is like, I like that character a lot in that movie, and for him to then be in this leading role in this movie as Mark, like, he gives a great performance. I like his overall kind of vibe and energy, and it feels a little bit like if they had made Bryan Cranston the main character of the first movie, feels kind of like what we got with this one. And so I really like it. I really like it.
I did not expect that from you. I honestly thought you might go with Sarazawa again.
Yeah, close, but no.
I honestly, I was going back and forth, and I was like, Chris is gonna probably choose Sarazawa in this one,
Oh, no
and
love
I was like,
lost for yeah, no love lost for Sarazawa, but I like Mark.
I chose Mark as well, and
Nice, nice.
I was bouncing back and forth between him and Sarazawa. I like his character arc in this. He goes from wanting to kill all the Titans because Godzilla accidentally killed his son in the 2014 attack, and he hates them. He thinks they should be gone. He's not a fan of Godzilla, and you slowly see him change through the film. Like when he's at the Castle Bravo and they're underwater, and he's telling them to open the shields, let Godzilla see us, so he knows we're not a threat. And he like slowly, you can see he starts to understand him through the film. He asks there's a scene in the film that kind of gives me like a little smile or chill, and where he's like, how many nukes do you have? And Sarazawa's like, why? And Mark responds, we could help him. That kind of gives me a little half smile every time I watch that part of the film.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, anyone who is ever once not a Godzilla fan who then becomes a Godzilla fan, like, that's the exact metaphor, that's the exact journey that Mark goes on in this movie. So, if there's ever someone who didn't know Godzilla, or was a Godzilla hater that kind of transferred and became a fan, like, that's the Mark Russell journey in this film. He goes from a hater to a fanboy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and he's again, he's one of those characters. He's trying to save his family or his daughter, and he's one of those characters I can get behind.
Yeah, and he manages to be a sort of heroic and active character without doing the sort of overly sort of like emphasized, kind of like, he's not like some big muscle action dude, tough guy who's like fighting everybody and doing all that stuff, but he is like an active character that does get stuff done and have heroic moments, and I like that.
Yep, he's absolutely great in this film. And like you, the first film I seen him in was the Peter Jackson's King Kong, and I actually went to see that film in theaters and had a absolute blast. I was 12 years old, 11 or 12 at the time, and the kids next to us, there was a younger kid who actually fell asleep in the theaters at the time, so that was kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean, it does take a bit to get to King Kong in that movie. I like that movie quite a lot, though. It's got more good than bad. But, maybe another pass in the editing room could have helped that one be a little more streamlined.
Shake shake the 10 minutes out of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 3-hour movie. Maybe they shake 20 minutes out.
I hopefully you and I can get to that film sometime, or the whole King Kong franchise, because that'll be a fun one as well.
I suspect we might.
Absolutely. I'll since we both picked Mark as our favorite character and you went first, I'll go ahead and go for our favorite score or soundtrack of the film, and I'll shout out a couple, but I'll have to defer to the entire soundtrack. I mean, I love the Godzilla theme, the Mothra theme, the Boston fight scene music. I believe that is what it's called as well.
It's
Battle in Boston.
Yep.
Yeah, that's like an 8-minute track, and I just think of the when King Ghidorah lifts Godzilla into the sky and drops him, how like gorgeous that music is to that fits the scene. And I love this entire soundtrack. But if I had to pick one, if I was going to choose one that was my favorite, it would have to be from the first battle in Antarctica, called Old Rivals, and that sounds like this. I was having a hard time choosing, so I was like, what one do I pick? But that has to be the one when Godzilla breaks out of the ice and you see him see King Ghidorah and give him that snarl and the close up of his face. That just sends like a chill down your spine as a Godzilla fan and makes you sit up in your seat like, oh yeah, here we go.
Yeah, absolutely. Bear McCreary was the composer for this film, and he did a phenomenal job. This is absolutely my favorite score of any MonsterVerse film. This is actually absolutely the best soundtrack overall. It's a great 2-disc CD, and the second disc is basically the whole final act of the movie. It's all of the tracks from the final act of the movie, and that second disc gets a lot of replay time in my car. Uh, I love that if an American movie finally had the idea of, hey, let's include the classic Godzilla themes and some of the vintage themes in here for the American movie. I feel like that should never even be up for debate. It's like the James Bond music. Like, Godzilla should just come with his theme song that he's always had. They shouldn't be so dead set on coming up with a new musical score, but that's okay. If I had, again, it's hard to pick, and I was juggling 2 different tracks all the way up until the end to pick a favorite. But if I had to pick a favorite, it would probably be King of the Monsters, which is the track that closes the film out and covers Fire Godzilla as well as the other monsters bowing to Godzilla. To me, that's just the perfect concluding music to the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with you. And what I'm sure we'll talk about it in scene, but what a way to end a film, you know, with Godzilla standing there and that track coming in, dun 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 dun, as you see Godzilla, King of the Monsters, come across the screen. But
Yeah.
I'll play a little bit for you here in a second.
Yeah, really like that music.
The music in this film, it's so powerful, like the tones, and it has a lot of bass, and there's a lot going on, like the orchestra and the instruments and like the chanting in the background. There's just a lot going on in each track
Y-
that makes it sound phenomenal with the scenes it's encompassing.
Yeah, the huge compositions and big, just a lot, again, like you said, a lot going on. There's just a lot of layers to it. The composer Bear McCreary said that uh the director told him that if Star Wars was a space opera, then Godzilla King of the Monsters was a monster opera. So he approached the musical score with that mindset, that he was making something sort of big and grandiose and operatic, and I don't think there's any more appropriate way to describe this film.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to do something uh maybe a year ago and rank all the Godzilla soundtracks of each film
Oh,
from
wow.
like the my least favorite to my favorite.
Oof.
And this this came out to be my favorite of the entire franchise with I mean it's battling back and forth with like Godzilla vs. Destroya and like Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, and now Godzilla minus one. That soundtrack is up there quite a bit as well. That one might be a top five for me. I once we get to that film, we can embellish on that. But I love that soundtrack for that film as well.
Yeah, this one and Shin, those CDs, they get a lot of airtime in my car.
Yeah, and I don't blame you. Like I've
But
said
it,
in
but in but
previous
in fairness,
episodes.
but in fairness, a lot of Shin's soundtrack was using vintage hit pieces from prior films. So the original, it wasn't so much about the original pieces, but there's a lot of greatest hits on that Shin Godzilla soundtrack.
Yeah, and I mean that's okay too. I mean these are all just you know taken from previous films and redone. You know, they were reworked into an updated version, and they added some chanting. They added like a little bit more bass to it, a little more instrumentation. But I mean, they're the same. A lot of it is the same soundtrack from previous films, just updated with a new composer.
Yeah, I like that they use the Mothra theme music, but man, would it, and I'm not saying necessarily that there's a way to incorporate it into the story of the movie, but man, it would have been cool to, at least like for the end credits version of the song or something, to get the full Mothra song sung by like sung by modern singers, like to get it with this composition, like this musical update, like that just would have been really cool, you know.
I believe there is a track. You can type it into like YouTube, and it's the like Mothra song with lyrics or something, and it is the Bear McCreary version with
Oh,
the,
with
with
the
them singing
vocals.
along.
Oh, that'd be a great thing. I feel like that's like the only missing piece from this soundtrack is like some version of that, like to hear the Mothra song lyrics and whatnot, you know, because but you know that would be fun. But that's great. That's great. I mean, the it's a masterpiece of a score.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it for absolutely what it is. Do you want, since we want to go back and forth, do you or did you have a favorite quote or favorite or most memorable line for this film?
Yeah. So it's a bit of a monologue from Sarazawa, but I think it's kind of like the heart of the movie very much for me. So I'll read it here. He says, "There are some things beyond our understanding, Mark. We must accept them and learn from them, because these moments of crisis are also potential moments of faith, a time when we either come together or fall apart. Nature always has a way of balancing itself. The only question is, what part will we play?" And to me, that's basically, you know, that's the theme of the movie right then and there.
Yeah, and it's even better that he read it in a really long fortune cookie, you know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a great joke he plays, but yeah, it's sort of, you know, Mark's sort of character development. Very, you know, Sarah's always playing sort of the mentor role here, and he's helping Mark along his journey and helping Mark sort of grow and understand and evolve as a character, and you know he delivers the words that are needed when they're needed most, and I like that.
Yeah, he's a very inspirational character and someone you can easily look up to in the film.
Hmm.
My quote also came from him, and it was a little later on in the film where he's getting ready to go in and deliver the nuke or like the warhead into Godzilla to help him recover. And he's talking to Mark, and Mark says, "Are you sure about this?" And Sarazawa says, "He fought for us, died for us. He's not only proof that coexistence is possible, he is the key to it." And I just like that because I mean, Mark all along wanted Godzilla dead, and now he's understanding that in 2014, it was an accident. Godzilla saved them, and he's realizing they can't win this battle against Ghidorah without Godzilla either.
Hmm. And the line like "he fought for us, he died for us," you know, just driving home that Jesus metaphor for Godzilla in this movie, you know.
Yeah, and I mean it just there that quote just leads into such a phenomenal scene, and I'll just go ahead and get right into it. That the for our favorite scenes for the film, I mean, again, I had a couple because, like I said, this is a film that I watch all the time. You know, it's probably in my top five favorite films of all time for me. But the I will do some honorable mentions of the Boston fight scene, the Godzilla, the first Antarctic, his entrance with him breaking through the ice and standing up and, like I said, giving Ghidorah a mean mug, like, "What the hell are you doing here?" Like, and then but my favorite scene in the film, which is a tough one. I mean, it was probably Sarazawa's sacrifice, where he enters Godzilla's lair, he puts the nuke down, and he walks right up to Godzilla and like gets right face to face with him, puts his hand on him, and he says "Saraba Tomu," saying goodbye, old friend. And then you get the close up of Godzilla's eye, like showing that he's like a little humane. He's a living creature that understands. And then his lair just explodes. I think that scene is a 12 out of 10. For a Godzilla film, that's definitely my favorite scene in the film.
Yeah, it's a great moment, a great sort of humans don't often get to have like a quiet up close moment with Godzilla, and if there's any human character that kind of deserves something like that, it's a character like Sarazawa. And that's a great scene. Like you said, there's a highlight reel of great scenes for this movie. Anytime a monster makes their debut, Mothra hatching out of the egg, Rodan bursting out of the volcano, Ghidorah bursting out of the ice, those are all highlight moments. But and the Battle of Boston is just like an epic extravaganza. But if I had to pick, it's got to be, I think officially in this movie he's called Fire Godzilla, so as not to confuse him with the 1990s Burning Godzilla. But when Fire Godzilla debuts and just demolishes King Ghidorah, that's there were rumors and speculations that maybe that would be happening in this movie, and you don't know, you can never tell these things for sure. But when that happened in the theater, I was just over the moon to see a sort of powered up version of Godzilla take Ghidorah out like it was nothing. That was just fantastic for me.
Yeah, that was one of my runner-up scenes, especially when Godzilla's releasing his atomic pulse, and you see
Yeah,
in the background the Mothra in like the wings and stuff in
yeah,
the pulse, and
yeah,
it's awesome.
yeah, you hear Mothra's screech, Mothra's scream, as well as seeing the sort of outline of her wings in the pulse. Like it's this great, Mothra's sacrifice scene is a great one as well. It's a bit of a meme for the franchise, but when Godzilla's sort of down at the at the lowest he could be, and then you see her just sort of crawl over to defend him and get taken out to save him. Like it is a kind of a, for monsters and animals and things like that, like it's kind of a surprisingly touching moment. And then her energy goes down to him and gives him sort of renewed life and powers him up. Like it's just like, you know it's great visual storytelling. It's just great action, great monster stuff. How do you not love it?
Yeah, and you get a little sneak peek into it where it's like she gets killed and like blown up, I guess you could say, and like her like dust or like powder of her essence of her like kind of falls on Godzilla, and you see like cracks in his skin kind of start to glow and like light up red, and it's like,
Yeah,
as a fan, that
yeah,
means something. But if you're just paying attention and you don't watch Godzilla, you're like, oh, I guess that's kind of cool, what's going on? But as a
yeah.
fan, you're like, oh yeah, here we go.
Something's happening. Yeah, and call me crazy, but when the dust is falling on him, Godzilla makes a roar, and it's not like the roar is words, but the sort of like rhythm or pattern of the roar that he makes almost sounds like he's saying Mothra. Like it's like this two syllable kind of rah, rah thing. And like I heard it once, I was like, were they trying to make it sound like he was like saying Mothra's name like in mourning? I'm like, I don't know if it was intentional at all, but like that's all I hear when that moment happens now.
Well, that was his lady according to the film,
Yeah,
and
yeah. I mean, and yeah, hats off to this movie for making it official. They're a straight up couple.
yeah, finally. I
Yeah,
mean, there's so many different scenes with, I love the the fight scene on the water where Ghidorah's coming after the Argo,
yeah,
and Godzilla just jumps out of the water and like
yeah.
grabs him by one of the
Well,
necks. And
and how about Rodan and Ghidorah colliding in the air? There's just a lot of really good. There's a lot of great visuals in this film for sure.
yeah, and I mean, just like to me, just like Godzilla versus Kong, if the humans never interfered with Godzilla fighting Ghidorah in the water, Ghidorah would have been a goner, just
He
like
probably,
Kong
yeah,
would have.
he probably would have killed him. Even the director said that, like, the water is Godzilla's element. He had one head ripped off. It's like he probably was coming for the other two.
Yeah, I mean, he was absolutely handling Ghidorah in the water,
Yeah,
and I
and
I didn't I didn't see that changing up anytime soon.
yeah, and that head that he ripped off belongs famously to the Kevin persona of King Ghidorah's three heads, and that is the head that ends up being used to power and link to Mechagodzilla in the next film. So a nice little bit of connective tissue there.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just so much. So, we could go on forever about scenes in this film. They bring in the oxygen destroyer and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
which the only, since we're on it, the only gripe I would make about the way the oxygen destroyer is brought into the movie because they kind of just introduce it out of the blue and then use it. If it were me, if I were sitting in the editing room or had the ability, I would maybe find a way. Do you know the scene earlier in the Senate when they're talking about the Titans and they're giving the presentation? I would maybe find a way in that scene to have, because Stenz is there. I would maybe have that scene be the scene where they introduce and talk about this new experimental weapon called the Oxygen Destroyer. I would introduce it there so that later on in the movie, when they bring it up to fire at Godzilla and King Ghidorah, it's something that's been planted way earlier in the movie instead of just introduced out of the blue. That is a minor thing that doesn't ruin it, but like that is like one editorial thing that whenever I watch the movie, I'm like, why didn't they just like use some kind of chance to introduce the Oxygen Destroyer earlier in the movie and then bring it back, instead of introducing it out of the blue? That's the only minor criticism I got as far as that goes.
Yeah, I mean, even if he didn't, say the name, he could have just said they've been working on an experimental weapon that they think could take
Exactly.
care of these monsters if needed to, kind of like a
Yeah.
little wink.
Yeah, something to feed it in, and then they reveal it's the Oxygen Destroyer later. Because when you watch the movie, if you're not someone who kind of knows the significance of that, it just feels like some crazy super weapon that's come out of nowhere. If you're not really in on the lore and the stuff.
Yeah, I'll end the scenes real quick. I want to give two more shout outs to scenes in this film, and it's when Ghidorah lands and regenerates its head, and then just full out like releases the roar with the wings expanding and stuff like that on the volcano, like that. That's a phenomenal scene, like a visual.
Yeah, framed in front of the cross, like a total kind of like Antichrist kind of a shot there. It's and the montage of all of the Titans emerging after that. Like it's just good stuff. It's just good stuff. Mothra and her stinger. Mothra using her stinger on Rodan. I mean, this movie just it goes hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give one more. My last one was when it's raining and Mothra comes out and kind of like clears the weather up, and Mark's like looking at her like, holy hell, like it's so bright. And the character goes, Mothra, Queen of the Monsters. I can't exactly remember her name. And
Yeah, Dr. Chen.
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And that's when they find out Godzilla's still alive. They hear the very faint roar of Godzilla, and
Yeah,
that leads into the. Go ahead.
Yeah, and officially dubbing Mothra as the Queen of the Monsters. These little things where it's like people made jokes and references about like, oh, Mothra's the Queen of the Monsters and Godzilla's the King, but it's like movies like this, it's like it's canon now, like it's official.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that part. That kind of when they're like, "Can you track him?" and no, but maybe she can. It gives me a little chill, and then it goes right into the scene where he's like, "How many nukes do you have?" And it's just
Yeah.
bunch of goodness there. I love
Yeah.
it.
That's only in a good old fashioned American blockbuster can you get a line of dialogue like, how many nukes do you have?
Right.
Well, how many nukes are there?
Oh, I'll stop gushing over the scenes of this movie. We'll continue. All right, what do you say? We gushed over some scenes and characters and everything. Why don't we get into some monster design? How did you feel about Rodan's updated design in this film?
I like Rodan's look as I like this sort of fire monster where there's sort of like molten sort of energy or fire or whatever, like almost coming from inside of him, like he sort of like it just emits like these burnt like the burning wings, that like this perpetually burning wing look that he has is just really cool. Like just adds this sort of elemental element to him. It's like he's Moltres from Pokemon or something like that. Just a really cool design detail. And he does very much have like the Heisei Rodan look, which I think is a good sort of pterodactyl pteranodon inspired kind of look. The original Rodan and the 60s Rodan kind of is a bit more like, at least in the beak and the face, kind of a bit more like bird like, and so this one's a bit more dinosaur esque, and I dig it. I think it's cool. It's a great look.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Everything on him in this updated look is like very sharp, very pointed
Yeah.
out, like the beak and everything. And I love the nickname they have for him in this film. You know, they call him Rodan, the fire demon. Like that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, that's awesome, and yeah, very sort of lethal bird of prey kind of design to it.
Yeah, almost like a eagle type like face, like beak and stuff like that. Like something
Yeah,
that you know can do some damage.
yeah, you could just see him like swooping down and plucking smaller titans off of the ground and killing them.
Yeah, and I don't want to go into another scene, but I will. You know, Rodan has a phenomenal scene against the Jets in this film where he just, he just like does a twirl and takes like 6 or 7 of them out, and the guy tries to eject out of his jet, and Rodan ends up eating him, and it's just Rodan has some good camera work in this film.
Yeah, yeah, that's an excellent sequence, and he has the flyover of the city that just and the wind power from it just rips the city apart. It's just some great stuff.
Yeah, another callback to the Showa era where they said he can produce hurricane forced winds, you know?
Yeah, and he's totally someone in a podcast once compared him to that Rodan in this movie's like Starscream. He's just bowing to whoever's strongest at the time. He's totally
Yep.
Starscream in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% couldn't beat Ghidorah, bow down.
Yeah.
Godzilla beats Ghidorah, he bows down to Godzilla. Like, all right,
Yep.
I
Yep.
just want to live.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I'll go into the Mothra design, and when I seen the Mothra design, I loved it. It's very much of an insect look. Like you said, she has the stinger. And every time, I love that every time she gets on camera or on the screen, I should say, that it seems to brighten up. Like she brightens up the movie. You know, if there's bad weather, she kind of clears a spot and there's a little sunshine or something like that. And I like that. The only thing I don't like about Mothra in this film is she's not in the movie enough. You know, I would love to have her for another couple minutes in the film.
Yeah, it's tough. It's definitely a juggling act when you get, a 2-hour movie and you've got four starring monsters. She's used kind of sparingly. Her moments are all great, but yeah, no one would ever complain about getting a little bit more. That's for sure. But she definitely has her moments though.
All right, I'll ask you to go ahead on the
Oh, I mean,
rebirth of Godzilla's greatest foe.
yeah. Yeah, sorry, I didn't really say much about Mothra's design. I like it. I like the sort of bioluminescent look. I like the kind of blue glow. I like the kind of angelic energy. I love giving her a stinger. I always hope that whenever new movies give like new abilities and features to these characters that they can maybe be carried over to future appearances. So it's a great design, for sure. But yeah, King Ghidorah's design, it's great. It's got this great sort of three-headed dragon design. He uses his wings to kind of like crawl in that way that we see like modern dragons do in a lot of movies and shows and stuff. The wings are almost arm-like appendages when they fold down. Uh, Again, just like you know, looks like Satan incarnate. Which is great. What's what you want from your villain?
Yeah, everything is. I love seeing how the heads and everything, the teeth are updated. Like it looks mean. You know, if you're going up against this Godzilla, because we get the close-ups of Godzilla's face in the 2014 film and this one, and the snarl that Godzilla can give. I mean, it gives off like you don't want to with me type vibes. And so you have to come up with a monster that he has 3 heads. He's 150 feet taller, 130 feet taller than Godzilla in this film, roughly. And you got to have somebody who looks like they would want to tangle with Godzilla, like they're not afraid with him. And King Ghidorah looks great in this film. The tails with the spikes on it look great. The wings, finally, Chris, we got the wings right. The wings are absolutely massive
Yeah.
for a flying creature, and they actually look like they could support the weight of that monster. Finally, I know I've been griping about it for a long time.
Yeah. This is a much more physiologically sound design for King Ghidorah for sure.
Absolutely. Very well said right there. On to the big G himself. He doesn't, there's not too much different. I love the updated plates or spines on his back, how they're more of a throwback Godzilla look. And I love how his atomic breath, it's kind of more stream like. It's thicker, and everything about this Godzilla, and from the 2014 to this one to the next film, I absolutely love it. It's I'll say this correctly this time for Chris. It is definitely a G tier in my opinion. So I don't have too much to say about it except that I love it.
Yeah, it's a beefier design. I like the idea that Godzilla in 2014 sort of recently awoken. He's maybe low on energy. His breath is more of a smoky kind of blast because he's not really got much going on, and but he's sort of powered up in this one. I like that they give him they push the roar a little bit further back even to the classic roar sound, which is good. I like the new roar, but they give it even more of the vintage flavor to it. Uh, the spikes and spines are kind of like if there are fans of the Godzilla Aftershock comic, they would know that his spines were destroyed in a battle with another Titan, and these are the regrown spines. Um, his claws on his feet are kind of like grown out in a way that kind of make his feet look a little bit less like elephant feet and a little bit more like his classic sort of feet. And yeah, he's got that powerful thick blue atomic blast in this movie. He gets to go fire mode and unleash the shockwave. It's great. It's a great look. Bigger, beefier. Just love it.
Yeah, speaking of the fire burning Godzilla type, um, I like that design. There's one point in the film where he's getting ready to step on King Ghidorah that the CGI looks a little questionable, but other than that, I mean, I think the burning Godzilla looks great too. Now, or fire Godzilla. Now, if you want to compare the two from 95 against Destroya or the 2019 version, that might be a debate to have one day, which one you like more or whatnot. But
Yeah.
for an updated design, it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Destroy it was like the whole movie, and it's kind of this solidified kind of look. It's not really like a power up mode. It's kind of this other thing. So like the burning Godzilla from Destroyer with the constant smoke billowing around him and things like that. Like that's special in and of itself. So hard to kind of trump that, but I would love to see some variant or version of a fire Godzilla maybe show up in Godzilla Kong, see Godzilla kind of go Super Saiyan one more time. It would be cool.
Yeah, for sure. I think for monster design, I think that's all I'm going to do for this film. I know there were plenty of other like quick little glimpses of other monsters, but I kind of just wanted to focus on the big four for this one, talk about
Yeah,
them.
yeah, and I mean as far as we get the one that's kind of like a giant version of a woolly mammoth, one that's kind of a giant spider, one that's basically just another Muto variant. There's not a they're good designs, they're cool solid designs that are unique and interesting, but they're not, insanely radically wild things to talk about.
Yeah, right. Maybe down the road in another MonsterVerse film, we'll get more of these. But until then, like I said, I wanted to focus on these big four because these big four are Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Rodan are huge in the Godzilla franchise and with the fans.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Chris, how about we wrap it up with some final thoughts on 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters
Sure.
if you want to lead.
Yeah, sure. It's a G tier Godzilla movie. It's definitely, it's this sort of perfect synthesis of a modern Godzilla blockbuster infused kind of top to bottom with the DNA of a vintage 50s, 60s, 70s Godzilla movie, and even aspects and elements of the Heisei era. Like it is, people say this about films all the time that, oh, but Godzilla King of the Monsters is absolutely a love letter to the franchise. It came out for the 65-year anniversary, and it feels to the best of its ability, that it tries to wrap up as much, vibes and energy and references and connections to kind of celebrate 65 years of Godzilla lore within one movie.
Yeah, and I think they did a fantastic job. My hat is definitely off to Michael Doherty and Bear McCreary for everything they did to this film. All the little callbacks, the redesign of the monsters. Even a lot of people say things about the characters in this film. I absolutely have a blast following Sarazawa and Mark and Dr. Chen and all of them along the ride. I literally have zero bad to say about this film. It's
Yeah, and
easily go ahead.
yeah. Oh, I think that Vera Farmiga is great as Emma, like this great sort of like conflicted sort of antagonist protagonist, and Millie Bobby Brown, people give her a lot of crap, but I think she's great as Madison. The biggest criticism I would give this movie as far as the characters go, which I think it's a big ensemble, and maybe there's just maybe it's just a few characters heavy in terms of the ensemble. It's a lot of characters, and you could have maybe folded some of them into one another. Like the Rick character with the glasses and the sort of scrawny, twerpy kind of scientist character. Like those maybe could have been rolled into one comic relief character instead of two different ones. Maybe you have a little bit. The military characters, maybe they didn't need to have like quite so many of like the military guys all being separate characters and talking and whatnot. Like some of that, you could have just maybe had to be a slightly smaller ensemble cast, but that's a pretty minor criticism.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably easily, one of my top three favorite Godzilla movies. I mean, I'm spoiling one of our little rankings here, but I mean, I could almost watch this once or twice a week. Put it on in the background. I could sit down and watch it. This is one of the Godzilla films that if you're a new fan or trying to get somebody into watching these films, this is one I think even a younger kid could watch with the splashy special effects. Turn the TV up a little bit for the fight scenes and just they don't have to completely understand what the human characters are doing to understand like where they're going. Okay, we're going to Antarctica and then we're going here, we're going there. Godzilla's following us he's chasing King Ghidorah, and this is just one of those films that as a Godzilla fan, you've probably guaranteed that you've seen it, whether you like it, love it, hate it. But I mean, if you're trying to get a new fan into Godzilla with the updated special effects and whatnot, this would probably be one of the five that I show someone who's an upcoming or a new Godzilla fan.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're someone who kind of only got on board with the MonsterVerse, after seeing Godzilla 2014, which is just very American in the way it's executed, this is a nice way to sort of bring that sort of vintage energy and style and tone of the monster roster and all of that stuff, like the feel and the vibe and the spirit of the more classic Godzilla movies into the modern era.
Yeah, and I mean, as a kid, there's scenes in this film that are gonna get a smaller kid hyped if they're like fans of like monster movies or like things like that. And one of the things I didn't bring up to you, Chris, that I meant to was Godzilla's entrance into Boston. Where he hits
Yeah,
Godzilla or he hits Ghidorah with his atomic breath, and you see Madison turn around and smile, and then
yeah,
you see Godzilla his entrance and the music kicks in, and
uh-huh,
that gives me the chills too. You see
yeah.
hear his roar and you see her smile, and it's like, all right, here we go.
100%. We get some more Godzilla swimming underwater scenes in this movie, which has kind of become this sort of tradition of like CGI Godzilla swimming underwater. That's like a recurring thing. When he first debuts out of the ice in Antarctica, they introduce him like they did in Godzilla 2014, like starting at the feet and panning up, which is also, that's a callback in and of itself to Return of Godzilla and how he was introduced in that movie. And then the Boston entrance is a little bit of a reference to Terror of Mechagodzilla, how the blast comes from off screen and then you kind of pan over and reveal Godzilla. Like it's all these kind of links and connections to the lineage and the legacy, and they're cool scenes in and of themselves. But they're also linking back to the history of the franchise, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the films that if I'm sitting down and watching it and my lady gets home from work, or her and my little girl wake up from a nap or get home from the store or whatever, this is one of the ones, and she's not a Godzilla fan by any means. She's watched them all with me, but she just she considers herself invested at this point. So from here on out, she'll watch all the new ones with me, but this is the one she'll sit down right next to me and just her eyes are glued to the TV. She enjoys this one just as much as, well, not just as much as I do, but she enjoys it.
Yeah,
And this is a phenomenal film.
yeah, I had some group of friends that I could tell they were not super high on G14 when it came out. They that like the whole like, oh, there's not that much monster stuff, there's not that much Godzilla stuff. Oh, it's a little slow. Like I could tell that like they were kind of on that side of the fence, but we saw this one in theaters, and that was one that like they kind of all came away. This was one they all came away being like, man, that was really solid. Like that was really good. That was pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah, this movie is definitely one of my go-tos. Probably one of my favorite movies of all time. Probably one of my favorite film soundtracks of all time. One of my favorite Godzilla designs of all time.
Yeah, and it gets a lot of love from the fans these days, which is nice. You see the polls that people have on X and things like that, and you'll see that Godzilla King of the Monsters will regularly win as like the favorite MonsterVerse film so far. So it's nice. It's like, again, you know, the in and of the moment box office performance is not the only thing that determines a film's legacy. This film is, as it's 5 years later now. This film has aged well, and people love it and people support it, and it's a great entry in the franchise, and the franchise is still thriving. So there you go.
Absolutely. It absolutely is. Well, before we get out of here, I'll tell anyone who's listening to check out our Facebook page at Chills and Thrills on Facebook. And then other than that, I think that is all we have for 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Yep, we said it all.
Absolutely. So again, thank you for joining me. We're getting short on these Godzilla films. We're catching up to them. Only a couple more, and then we're out of here and on to the next film franchise that we feel that we want to do, or that the listeners feel like voting on if we get enough votes on it.
Yeah, every single Twilight movie.
Oh yeah, I have never seen them.
Yeah, me neither. Me neither. Loud and proud. Never seen a Twilight
Absolutely
movie.
loud and proud.
Yeah, yeah. And I
But
was in.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was in high school during those, and so there was a lot of peer pressure to take this girl on a date, take her to the Twilight movie. Nope, nope, nope. I have my dignity.
Nope. I'm going, if we're going on a date, we're going to see the new Friday the 13th or something like that.
There you go. There you go. That's one I won't miss.
Absolutely. But yeah, heck yeah, man. Absolutely. Thank you for joining me for this one. I've been looking forward to this film since we started the podcast. So I'm happy that we finally.
Yeah, and this episode in particular, we won't get into it, but like a long time coming to get to this episode in particular in terms of coordinating everything and making it happen. We keep missing it.
Yeah, well, we finally got it, and I think it's going to be a good one. And again, thank you for joining me. I mean, it's always a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Next week, on our next episode, we do have Godzilla vs. Kong, which followed this film and was released on March 31st, 2021. So that should be another fun time. That is a good film in its own, and that should be a good discussion between us, visiting the rematch of the two mightiest monsters that the world has ever seen.
That's the one I'm jonesing for. I won't. You're gonna have to rein me in on that one, because I could go on and on and on and on. There's this meme going around, where they were saying like, oh, men are always thinking about the Roman Empire. So then people would share memes and say, this scene from this movie is my Roman Empire, to say like, oh, that's all I always think about. Like Godzilla vs. Kong is like my Roman Empire.
I will let you go because, like I said, these that's why we're doing these podcasts to nerd out and let each other talk.
Exactly. So it'll be a great time. It'll be a fun time.
Absolutely. So thank you again. Thanks anyone who's listening. Again, Godzilla vs. Kong is next week, but until next time.